Chapter 16. Isla had slept for longer than she thought she would. Her colleagues' warnings of jet lag and what normally happens on the first night of each trip to the East Coast really hadn't come true. Although she had woken up several times through the night, she'd quickly found a way for the dark lords of sleep to recapture her. And once finally awake, there were no signs that her body clock was kicking her from the inside out. She felt alive enough to figure out how to fill the coffee machine. Now this was what transatlantic travel was about. The kind of ground coffee that she never got at her mum and dad's house. It was already mid-morning and Isla felt a pang of regret at missing much of her only full day in New York, as well as the mild hangover that was a welcome reminder of last night. She wondered what a date looked like if it wasn't that. It could not have been more different to her most recent evening with a man, or in this case, a boy. What was I doing? He was 16 years old and my boss's son. Mike? Matt? Mark, that's it, Mark. With Steve, there had been affection, a real connection, not someone she wanted to creep away from without turning on the lights. Could this be something more than friends? Her male friends didn't bond with her in the way Steve had with her. Self-doubt was never far away. What if he didn't see things the same way? Am I even his type? Had she made a fool of herself? She wasn't very good at friendships. Growing up, friendships were thrown together through a combination of the geography of home and school, and most of them died as quickly as they came. There were a few that outlasted change, but the mantra she'd heard at school still proved to be true. Friends for a reason, friends for a season, or friends for life. Every friendship still seemed to fall into one of those three groups. Reasons and season friends had come and gone, meaning she had little to fall back on when it came to what the last one felt like. Lucy was her closest thing to a lifelong friend, but while she stayed on at school for A-levels, Isla went to college to do her BTEC over in Watford. And now Lucy was at uni in Birmingham, whilst Isla was here looking down on 6th Avenue. Understandably, they were losing touch, and however much she knew there would always be a place in their hearts for each other, it was unlikely they would reconnect in the way they had done as kids growing up. Dinner in Arturo's in New York, or a pound a pint student club in the middle of Aston. She knew where she'd rather be, and as such, change in the dynamic was inevitable. The thing with Steve could be the grown-up friendship she wanted. He didn't try to kiss her. Don't all men try to kiss pretty girls? Does this mean I'm not pretty? Isla hadn't been on a date with anybody who hadn't tried for a snog at the end of a great night since she hooked up with a kid from school called Mac, and he turned out to be into boys. Was Steve gay? Stop it, Isla. Not every gay man was as camp as Jeremy. Isla quickly consigned her questions and self-doubts to another time. She'd had one day in this huge city, and rather than wasting the day thinking about the things she couldn't control right now, she nipped downstairs for the last embers of the breakfast buffet, putting some fruit and breakfast bars into her bag for later. She had no idea how much street food would cost in New York, but her frugal instincts reminded her that she could save her allowance by swiping from the buffet and save it for the excitement of the evening. Isla was swamped by the crowds heading up to Central Park. She couldn't look upwards for fear of being knocked over or losing her footing. Her pity was mostly reserved for the ones heading against the tide. No one seemed to reserve their mercy for their fellow pedestrians. This reminded her of when she was 10 and her mum took her to the Christmas sales on Oxford Street. It was memorable for its aggressive chaos, but this was a Monday morning in September and Isla was now all grown up and supposed to be physically capable of dealing with these things. Somehow she made it unscathed across the 4 slow-moving lanes of traffic circling the park. The imagined mosaic, known locally as Strawberry Fields, was first on the to-do list. She'd promised her dad a framed photo because he was a huge Beatles fan, especially in their early days when they made the stuff featured in the film Backbeat. Having got her dad the film on video as a Christmas present, it was the one thing they repeatedly watched together over several months. Determined to fully embrace the role of bona fide tourist, Isla made for all the cheesy sights she could, walking around the park, looking at the multitude of film locations and taking the accompanying snaps that her parents would recognise. The big locations were in Ghostbusters, Home Alone, and the one in Harry Met Sally, filmed at the boathouse where Isla queued for a hot chocolate, nearly collapsing at the $7 price tag. Free from any commitments, she took her time ambling around the vastness of the park, but soon realised the day had almost gone and she'd seen nothing more than the place where so many quirky characters had forever been frozen onto film. It would have been rude not to nip into FAO Schwartz on the park's southern edge to round it all off, seeing where the piano scene in Big was filmed, but she wanted to see the New York not captured in cinematic history. Ambling around the grand buildings nearby, she saw the Gothic magnificence of St. Patrick's Cathedral and Whispering Gallery in Grand Central. Here, though, she wished she was not on her own. Everybody else she saw was part of the couple, kind of an important thing when wanting to whisper on one side of the archway for a loved one to hear the whisper on the other side. I miss Steve. Isla wondered if he had left her a message back at the hotel. Would she see him tonight? She was hungry and thought ahead to dinner plans. One of the park vendors convinced her she could not claim to have visited New York without eating a genuine New York hot dog, but that was hours ago and the fruit was long gone. It was late afternoon. She had no idea who was around and whether there were any group plans for the evening. Isla would be returning on the first of the many evening flights out of JFK tomorrow, so would need to be well behaved this evening. In any case, she couldn't go to any bars. Her heart and mind were clear. She hoped Steve had left a message suggesting another evening out. Approaching the front desk in search of any messages for her, her heart sank when there was just one from her mum, who'd called to wish her well. Rather than appreciate the maternal gesture, it was the absence of any contact from Steve that she was focused on. Maybe she misread things and it was a one-night friendship. He may have assigned her to the category of friend for a reason. Can I leave a message for my friend Steve Lewis? I don't know his room number, but if I write it down, can you give it to him, please? Of course, madam. I'll make sure he knows there's a message for him. The desk clerk indicated that this was the most important thing he'd been asked to do that day. Isla relaxed and wrote the note. Steve. One word in, and the self-doubt was back with her. Do I write dear, too, or just leave it at Steve? Isla was already in a state. How to not sound too keen, and how to end it. Love from, or just see you, Isla. Finally, she settled on some words that would just have to do. Steve, thanks for last night. Absolutely lovely time. Hope you're okay. Maybe you want to do something. Call my room if you get this and can still remember who I am. See you, Isla. No kiss. The clerk took care to stow the message so that he had Isla's full confidence. His deliberate actions were clearly aimed at getting an expected tip, but Isla hadn't yet developed the trained eye and didn't twig the protocol. Should I put a kiss and started with dear? Having reached her room, she found that a note had been pushed under her door, giving a location and meeting time for her to join her colleagues for dinner. In the absence of a better offer within the next 90 minutes, it was off for another Hard Rock Cafe experience, a brand that was crap in every way except for their custom of discounting meals for cabin crew. It wasn't a bad perk if you liked the whole experience that went with heavy, well-cooked meat and an exhaustingly manic atmosphere, but was it too much to ask that BA develop some corporate alliances with places where she wanted to eat? The fatigue from her jet lag, doubled by the frivolity of last night, all on top of the miles of walking around the city, had left Isla exhausted. She lay on her bed just for a moment, but predictably she immediately dozed off, fully clothed with her trainers still stuck to her feet.